Hello everyone, I wanted to make a video for my critical thinking class as we are now in week 4 talking about knowledge and evidence. So let me share the screen. We'll go over some of the things including the discussion for the week and our assignment that we have. So we share the screen here. So last week we had a good discussion on the use and complexity of language with the nonverbal language assignment and the discussion over Mr. Howard's use of a certain word. This week, we're moving on to discussing the importance of knowledge and evidence. So the idea here is that as a critical thinker, whatever claims we are making about anything in life need to be supported by knowledge and specifically by evidence. We're trying to move away from opinion-based statements to more objective third-person research-based evidence-supported claims. So this week, those are the things that we're working on and learning about is supporting our ideas with evidence. Our work for the week includes the perception discussion. Like all of our discussions, this one runs from Wednesday through Sunday, and your first posts need to be in by Friday. And like all discussions, you need to commit a few replies to your classmates in order to earn full credit. This is a cool discussion. It's about the concept or the phenomenon of groupthink. So groupthink is this idea that individuals will think and act and behave in tremendously different ways than they normally would when they are a part of a group. And it's sort of the psychological explanation for things like riots, mob mentality kind of thing, as well as some other more specific scenarios in life in which individuals behave tremendously different than they perhaps would on their own. The video, I believe, the video that's linked to the discussion shows an experiment in which people are, the people who are in the experiment are saying that of like 3 lines drawn on a board, one of them is the longest when it very clearly isn't. And the person who is not in on the experiment, who is observing this, ends up generally caving and going along with the group's answer, even though they are there looking at the lines and know for themselves the correct answer, but the pressure of the group situation sort of overcomes their own critical thinking. So we're going to talk about that kind of an idea throughout the perception discussion. This phenomenon of groupthink. It's an interesting one. And then we also have the experience and expertise assignment due on Sunday the 31st by 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time. This one is an easier writing assignment than last week's, I believe. It's only really asking you to write just 2 paragraphs. Let me share the prompt real quick and we'll look at it together. Okay, so Malcolm Gladwell is a popular current author who recently wrote a book called Outliers. In his book, he claims there is sufficient evidence to conclude that before someone becomes an expert at something, they must put in 10,000 hours of practice. Gladwell bases his claim primarily on the work of psychologist Anders Ericsson. Your assignment is to write 2 paragraphs, one supporting Malcolm's 10,000 hour rule and one critically arguing against the 10,000 hour rule. So again, you're writing 2 paragraphs, one supporting the rule that it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. And then as the second paragraph, you're arguing that it doesn't take 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. The idea here is to practice writing and thinking critically about multiple sides to an issue and being able to recognize that in most cases, even with people that you tremendously disagree with, and you might think like, how could that person possibly think that way? In most cases, they have just as good of reasoning for their stance as you likely do for yours. And it's a good practice to learn how to build arguments on multiple sides of an issue in order to see why people think what they think, right? Let's look at the rubric specifically here. There's 25 total points possible, 8 points for your argument in support of the rule, 8 points for your argument against the rule, 6 points for your use of research, reason, and examples, and 3 points for writing mechanics. What I want to stress here with this assignment are just a few things. The first is a lot of times students go too general with this prompt, and they rely on the cliche practice makes perfect. Gladwell is not arguing that practice makes perfect. He is arguing that a very specific amount of time, 10,000 hours of practice, is necessary for someone to be an expert, not that just practice makes perfect. So one thing there is just make sure you're arguing the correct thing. The second is that these paragraphs should rely on research, reason, and examples. They should not rely on first-person narrative subjective examples. And the issue with first-person examples is that they are entirely subjective. So sometimes students will try to use like their own personal experience. I became an expert at whatever. It took me less than 10,000 hours. Therefore, Gladwell's rule is wrong. First-person subjective narrative examples are always that. They're just always subjective. They're not objective research-based. Your own personal experience, not that important in academic writing. So instead, you're going to want to do some research. You're going to want to think of real, like objective examples, objective reasoning to support these things, to support both sides of these arguments. Use examples that are outside of yourself. Use reasoning and research that isn't necessarily about you. Keep it third person. And that goes down to my last point, which is writing mechanics. All academic work needs to be composed in Times New Roman 12-point font, and it should be using APA style in-text citations and APA style reference, APA formatting, and specifically avoid using first-person point of view, I, me, my, we statements. Keep it third person, and then absolutely avoid the second person you, your voice. That voice is really problematic for academic writing. If you make statements like in your essay, such as, if you have ever played an instrument, you know that it takes 10,000 hours. When you use that voice, that second person, you, your voice, you're talking to your reader, who in this case is me. And it's kind of a weird thing because you're assuming knowledge about your reader that you can't possibly have. The example I always like to use as to why you should avoid second person is I had a student a few years ago who wrote a paper about in vitro fertilization, and it was a really cool paper, but she had a lot of statements in there like, you know how when you're pregnant and you feel this way? I'm her target audience. I don't know those. I don't know that, right? I'm not going to know that. It's one of those weird things where we use second person all the time when we're talking. We say things like, you know, but for academic writing, keep it all third person. So again, your assignment is to write 2 paragraphs, one in favor of the rule or in support of the rule, one against the rule. Remember, academic paragraphs should be pretty chunky, at least 5 sentences per paragraph. You want to have strong topic sentences. You want to have logical reasoning and evidence that kind of builds on your main idea, and then a good concluding sentence. For whatever reason, sometimes students occasionally write a lot of paragraphs for this assignment, and it counts against you. So please don't do that. You are specifically being asked to write only 2 paragraphs. Okay, that assignment is due Sunday night by 11:59 p.m. Mountain time, but I'm not too picky about the time zones, as long as it's not like turned in at 7 a.m. the next day sort of thing. That's it. If you have questions, if you need help with the discussion or with the assignment, let me know. I'm happy to offer some feedback, some guidance. Hopefully it's not too challenging of a task, but that's what we have this week. And If you have any questions or anything, just please feel free to let me know.